Well, good morning, and very delighted to be here in Abu Dhabi. I think the morning has been a really nice start, and I appreciate the organizers for putting this conference together. There's been a lot of great commentary and touching on impact of blockchain in transactions and real estate and banking and financial. I want to move into another area now, and it really has to do with something that's common ground for everybody here, and that is health, and where and how blockchain and some related technologies, cryptocurrencies, what does this have to do with addressing some things that are perhaps bigger than banking, bigger than transactions, more important than financial? And that has to do with the basic health and wellness of all peoples and really the world itself. And I think this is one of the most exciting areas of the development of some of these new areas of technology. And that's the area that I will begin to address. Just leading into that, a little bit of perspective. When we talk about new technologies and we talk about changes, and I heard the comment a few minutes ago that jobs, for example, have recycled in 10 or 15 years. That is so true. But it's also true if you step back a little bit further, that entire industries come and go every 30, 50, 100 years. So standing here in UAE, which I always enjoy and appreciate, is to know for a fact that entire countries and economies can be invented out of the blue in decades. This was a beautiful and serene surrounding, primarily noted for pearl diving, not that long ago. And to transform from that into one of the world's most powerful and rich economies due to the discovery of oil in the region could not have been more transformative. And now, at the same time, you take a look at the vision for Abu Dhabi and for UAE for 2030 and beyond. It is how to move beyond oil, how to move into new sectors of economies that can create jobs and create opportunities for people that is not dependent on oil. What I would suggest to you that what we're talking about here with the impact of things like cryptocurrencies and blockchain on the great health challenges of our times is an example of the opportunity that's available to anybody in the world, any country in the world, any people in the world, if you think about how to use disruptive transformational technologies to solve major problems and do it in a very different way than has been done before. So that's a bit of a backdrop. So keep that in mind as we move forward. And I'll also add that there are three ways to deal with change. You really only have three options. You can lead, you can follow, or you can get out of the way. Anything other than that, you're probably going to have tire marks in your back. Somebody's going to run over you because things are going to keep moving. So let's talk about a backdrop. When we talk about health and we talk about health information and even medical, it's very easy to leap to thinking about things like medical records, especially when we talk about something like blockchain. We're talking about information, so surely we must be talking about medical records. How can you take medical records per person or per hospital, and instead of having those captured in traditional formats, capture them in a different format? But what if we talk about something far more transformative than just medical records? So think about what's going on in the world. Today's reality is that growing threats from superbugs, infectious disease, and cancers and other chronic conditions are, even with advances in modern medicine, they are more dangerous today than they have been in the last 80 years, 100 years. And the reason is that for all the great advances, we have something that occurs in nature that's advancing faster than blockchain, faster than cryptocurrencies, faster than the price of Bitcoin. And it's called mutations. Bacteria, viruses, and the basic building blocks of life, the basic building blocks of molecular life, change faster than almost anything in the world. And what we find today is that the chances of a superbug originating in a region like MERS in the last few years in this region of the world in the Middle East, the Gulf states, new types of bird flu, new types of flesh-eating bacteria, or just basic flu or cold are now more dangerous than they were 5 or 10 or 15 years ago. And the reason for that is that mutations are happening faster and faster, and the world is getting more mobile. People are moving around. So at the speed of a bacteria and DNA changing is the speed of which very dangerous health conditions can move and evolve. And by the way, that is all about information. Instead of being about real estate information or financial transaction information, it's about DNA, it's about molecular markers, it's about chemical markers, it's about physical markers in actual living cells or microbes or bacteria or membranes. Now, let's step back and think about change. So in the last few decades, when you look at the introduction of the internet, you had the internet really growing quite quietly under the radar screen during the 1960s, the 70s, the 80s, and you got into the 90s, and all of a sudden it became a real thing to most people instead of something that was just among scientists and researchers. Moving into modern usage on a very rapid adoption scale started in the mid-90s. And that started to hit healthcare and started to hit medicine. This is where you started to get medical records and also the availability of information to citizens everywhere to help diagnose their own health. When you start moving into Internet of Things in, let's just call it the last 5 to 10 years especially, you're talking about how to connect to machinery and devices, energy management, and equipment in ways that bring those into a connected environment as well. That means the next round of information becomes available. And that's an enormous growth over even just the internet. Moving into the Internet of Nano Things or biological things is a transformation much, much larger than the cumulative change of the Internet of Things and the Internet itself. Because now we are starting to move into the ability to connect and obtain information about those things that you normally don't think about because you don't see them. We're sitting in a room here, and we can count how many tables, we can count how many people, we can count how many chairs, we can count the things that we can see. But what we don't think about counting is the things that we don't see. How many cells are in this room? What number of bacteria are in here? What is in the air? Is there anything coming off the carpet that we should know about? Is there anything come out of these air vents that's floating around that has to do with our health and wellness? Right? Is the water fine? I'm sure it's fine. But what is it? Is there anything in the water? Or anything on surfaces? Things that you grab. We shake hands. We talk to each other. What is all that information that's moving around? It's basic health information. It's information from cells and from molecules. This is the BioLife information that makes all of us healthy or not, that leads to dramatic outbreaks of something as simple as everybody gets sick with a common cold to a pandemic breaks out, right? Ebola shows up, Zika shows up, or a form of flu that emanates in livestock or poultry and all of a sudden becomes a serious threat. So I give you this backdrop because all of what I'm talking about is information. That's all information. So the ability to access that information, address that information, analyze it, and act on it, gives us an enormous opportunity to begin to get more control over things that we don't have control over, or knowledge of things that we don't have knowledge of. And that is the fundamental building block of life and of health and of wellness. Now, enter what I would describe as the nanosingularity, which is where all of that biological life comes together with the development of nanotechnology, which is understanding how things in the world work at nanoscale, which is beyond microscopic. It's nanoscopic. It's smaller than 100 nanometers, which is what you look at in an electron microscope. And then think about digital technology, including blockchain, cryptocurrencies, and advances in semiconductor technology, computing power, all beginning to converge. Now we have a next generation convergence that lets us address all that information that we have from biological life that we could never obtain before outside of a laboratory in specialized equipment like electron microscopes. So that new era of nanosingularity is where I put blockchain right in the middle of, right along with artificial intelligence and molecular data. And the reason I do that is because blockchain and related technologies is that transformational, and it's that important in being able to chronicle and address information that's never before been able to be obtained in large amounts out of real life in real time. Now bring this together and say, how does this help us address some of the great health challenges? Add one more item, and this is something that we are doing as a company with Nano. We are actually developing a new set of embeddable nanoscale microprocessors that will be smaller than the head of a pin, have artificial intelligence embedded on the chip, and be able to eventually be used not only in and on almost any device beyond a smartphone, beyond wearables, into just about any normal everyday object, but actually inside your body, right there with those cells, right there with those microorganisms. And that means much, much more information. That's that life data. So now we go back to thinking about how does that come together in an ecosystem where you are capturing that streaming life data. This is where the model of a blockchain ecosystem, where you're actually chronicling that life data in real time on a constant basis, tracking it, identifying it, and beginning to analyze that using all the data analytics tools and the AI tools. And the beauty of blockchain starts to become more clear. So wait a minute. If I can actually track activity and information coming off of bacteria, off of cells, whether they're a cancer cell or it's a common flu, then I can study it. If I can study it in real time, I can help do things that are smart. I can help prevent bad things from happening for it. I can help develop new antibiotics or new drugs. I can help predict in advance where there is a superbug that's developing and moving around the planet, and developing some way to either prevent that, cure it, or treat it before it becomes an epidemic or a pandemic. Because again, this is all information. So opening up, tracking, chronicling information using blockchain and related format is as big a breakthrough as the internet itself was, or the Internet of Things. In fact, coupled with that underlying nature of the internet, coupled with advances in AI, coupled with advances in chip technology, I would posit to you that taken together, we are moving into an era over the next few years that is beyond a breakthrough in how to use this technology for vastly improving the health and wellness of the world. And I do mean the world. I mean people. I mean livestock. I mean agriculture. I mean everything microbial and everything molecular, which is in fact just about everything. We want to understand how to desalinate the water better, and how can we do that in a healthier way? How can we, in fact, go and make sure that an emergence of a virus like MERS does not occur, or if it does, doesn't spread, and if that does, then what can be done to treat people with that? We can drive data using identified, certified blockchain information and all of the markers on that, which is thinking about as life hacking, bio life hacking, in a very positive way, because it vastly increases the tools that we have to work with, and that capturing and chronicling and analyzing of real life data in real time can advance the state of the art of health and wellness and medicine by decades or even by centuries in a very short period of time. Just like the example earlier of what the cumulative knowledge of the world's information is today in every 1 or 2 days versus all the information that's ever been accumulated in history. So this structure and this ecosystem where you're taking real-life molecular health data, capturing it by actually changing the way that everyday smartphones are used, the way that you take selfies, the way you take information on advances in optical information capture, and even molecular data, which is going to come into new generations of technology embedded in your cell phones, and adding in these smart chips into stethoscopes, into stents and catheters, into artificial joints, into lotions that you put on your skin, and into clothing that you're wearing, into the buttons on your garments. This brings it out to the world in real time. And that opens up marketplaces for that data. And the marketplaces for that data, not only can people make money by contributing data, even your own personal health data, but you can trade it, you can share it, you can aggregate that. This will dramatically change drug development processes, working with regulatory bodies like in the US, the FDA and the EPA and related bodies around the world. This can shave years or decades off of the process of analyzing data to come up with new cures, new drugs, new treatments, and in fact staying ahead of those mutating changes that are in the underlying biolife itself. So institutions like Cleveland Clinic in the US, Cleveland Clinic Abu Dhabi, health institutions in a country like UAE, collaborating with others around the world, can become utterly transformative, not only in health, but in terms of new job creation and new opportunity and new economic opportunity. And it is not bound by natural boundaries, no natural geographic boundaries. This is bound really only by the power of intelligence, harnessing this new information which is captured in mechanisms like blockchain, priced by cryptocurrencies, opened up in digital marketplaces, and brought to the world in new markets and new models. So that's a summary of some very, very profound changes that will happen with blockchain, with cryptocurrencies, and the ability to create not only new reaches of data, capturing it, harnessing it, analyzing it, but also opening it up in marketplaces. And this is the probably, to me, the most exciting of all the impacts of rapidly adopting technologies like blockchain and the ability to monetize with micro and nano level currencies. So that will, with that, I'll open up to any couple of questions that we have time for.
Yeah. So first will be that when we should be expecting our health records on the blockchain, how far you are seeing that? How far you are seeing that our health records to be in the blockchain?
I think the blockchain is already beginning to be adopted in research institutions. It's beginning to be adopted in more traditional areas like healthcare records, medical records. But what will transform things so profoundly is the combination of the capturing of that data, even things like the new generations of smartphones and devices, where the sensors and the optical images like cameras begin to capture into formats like this that will translate that data into open marketplaces that are accessed by researchers, by pharma companies, drug companies, and entrepreneurs. It's gonna open up new areas very, very quickly. And then the law of network effects kicks in, so that the more information you have, the more valuable it is, and the more people want to build on it.
Yeah.
Sir.
Is there an initial ICO, initial coin offering for this company?
We are going to do a set of token offerings here in the near term, and I'll tell you the main purpose of that. The main purpose of that is actually to fund the chronicling of data on a per disease state, for example, malaria, and certain outbreaks of things like gram-positive and gram-negative E. coli. These are very fundamental building blocks, and we will have a token offering that is really geared towards gathering that information, opening up research institutions so that we can get the collective information, which is actually remarkably not in any way, shape, or form available for development of cures of complex diseases, because laboratory information is segregated all over the world. Even though scientists do work together, the information itself is not gathered. So this will be a mechanism for very rapidly aggregating that data for research and for development.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Steve Papermaster. And now I would be also saying Steve Blockchain Master.